You're a little mouse trying to play in a palace and you're about to be stepped on." Victoria Davenport smiled cruelly as she watched the police snap handcuffs onto Emily the waitress she had just framed for theft. To the heiress, destroying this girl's life was just a necessary cleanup to secure her $50 billion merger with the Rossi empire. She thought she had stripped Emily of her dignity and her future. But Victoria didn't know that this invisible waitress held the key to the entire deal, or that in 48 hours Emily wouldn't just be serving dinner, she would be serving a revenge that would bring the entire dynasty to its knees. When Matteo Rossi, CEO of Rossi Global, brought his intimidating mother to a restaurant, he expected a night of tense negotiation with his fiancée. He didn't expect to overhear the waitress murmuring to his mother in a forgotten dialect. And he never expected to hear his mother, a woman who trusted no one, grasp the girl's hand and say, "You just stole my heart." Matteo Rossi existed in a world of pressurized glass and brushed steel. His office, occupying the 90th floor of the Rossi Tower in Manhattan, offered a view that swallowed the city whole. But Matteo rarely looked at it. His focus was always on the reflection in the glass, the spreadsheets, the market tickers, and the unwavering, cold logic that had crippled his family's fortune. At 34, Matteo was the undisputed king of Rossi Global, a conglomerate that had evolved from his grandfather's Tuscan leather-making shop into a behemoth of luxury automotive design and high fashion. He was respected, feared, and perpetually engaged. His fiancée, Victoria Davenport, was an engagement of logic. She was the daughter of Silas Davenport, the head of Davenport Industries, a rival in the tech sphere. Their impending marriage was less a union of hearts and more a merger of titans, a $50 billion deal that would secure their family's dominance for the next century. "The contracts are ready, Matteo," Victoria said, her voice as crisp as a new banknote. She was standing in his office, perfectly silhouetted against the skyline, adjusting the silk cufflink on his Brian suit. "My father is expecting the announcement at the gala on Friday." "He'll have it," Matteo replied, his eyes not leaving the screen. "Good," she kissed the air beside his cheek. "I'll see you at Lagotto tonight, 8 Azzurro. Don't be late. Your mother is insistent." Matteo's jaw tightened. His mother. Mama Isabella Rossi had arrived from Florence 2 days prior, and she was a storm of old-world tradition in his sterile, modern life. She despised New York. She despised the impending merger, and she despised Victoria Davenport. "Why that place?" Matteo asked, finally looking up. "Lagotadoro." The Golden Drop was aggressively authentic, painfully expensive, and according to his mother, the only place in the city that didn't serve garbage, masquerading as cucina italiana. Because Victoria said her smile not reaching her icy blue eyes, she refused to eat at the plaza. She said it tasted like a sad American's dream of Italy. Her words at Matteo. She swept out, leaving a trail of expensive, sterile perfume. Clear's throat, 20 blocks south, Emily Bianchi was polishing wine glasses until they squeaked. Her world was not glass and steel. It was steam clattering, Clear's throat plates, and the scent of garlic and basil. At 26, Emily was a veteran of the service industry, but she had never been just a waitress. She was a ghost from another life. Emily had arrived in New York 6 years ago, a prodigy from Siena, clutching a rare 18th-century violin and a full scholarship to Juilliard. She was going to be the next great soloist. Then disaster struck. A mysterious blight had wiped out her family's small vineyard in Tuscany, the same land her nonno had farmed. Within months, her father was facing bankruptcy from a predatory lender. Emily's scholarship was gone sold to pay the first of many debts. Her violin was gone, sold to pay for her mother's medical bills. Her dream was gone, replaced by a black uniform sore feet and the humiliating dance of serving people who had what she had lost. She worked doubles at Lagot d'Oro, sending every spare dollar back to Siena. Her only connection to her old life was the language. She spoke to her mother every night in their thick, lyrical Tuscan dialect, a language of home that felt like a shield. Emily barked Mr. Henderson, the manager. "Stop daydreaming. We have a VIP table coming in. The Rossi party. Don't mess this up. The mother is supposedly a dragon, and the son owns half the city. Be invisible. Be perfect." Emily nodded, her stomach sinking. Rossi? She knew the name. Their cars were sleek, predatory, and cost more than her family's entire vineyard. She straightened her apron, tucked a stray curl of auburn hair behind her ear, and prepared to be invisible. The dinner was a portrait of tension. Matteo sat at the head of the table, a king in his castle. Victoria sat to his right, radiating a frosty elegance, examining the rustic menu as if it were a legal document she was preparing to veto. And on his left, Isabella Rossi sat like a statue of judgment. She was a formidable woman, dressed in severe black silk, her grey hair pulled into a tight shin. She had not touched her water, and had already sent back the bread, claiming it was stale, though it was baked fresh an hour ago. "Matteo Franche," Isabella muttered in Italian. "This place is a circus." And she gestured toward Victoria with a barely perceptible flick of her eyes. She wouldn't know a real pity if it slapped her in the face. "Mamma, pavore." Matteo sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "We're trying to have a pleasant evening." "Pleasant? You are merging your soul with a block of ice, and you call it pleasant." Victoria, who spoke no Italian, smiled tightly. "Isabella, I do hope you're enjoying the ambiance. I find it so quaint." Isabella ignored her, turning her formidable gaze on Emily, who had approached to take their order. Emily kept her eyes down, her voice practiced and neutral. "Good evening. May I start you with an imperative?" Victoria ordered a mineral water with a twist of lemon, no ice. Matteo ordered a Negroni strong. Isabella simply stared at Emily, her dark eyes analytical. "What do you recommend, ragazza?" Isabella asked in sharp, formal Italian. Emily froze. It was a test. She could answer in English, be the invisible waitress. But something in the older woman's eyes, a deep, profound homesickness, called to her. Emily replied not in the formal Italian Isabella had used, but in the soft, rolling dialect of their shared Tuscan homeland. "Mum, if you permit me, the evening is a bit cold. Perhaps something to warm the heart. We have a ribollita that isn't on the menu. It's like my grandmother used to make." The entire table went silent. Victoria looked confused, then annoyed. What is she saying? Matteo himself was stunned. His mother's specific dialect was thick, almost archaic. He barely understood it himself. He had expected the waitress to be flustered. Instead, she had answered as if she'd been born in the next village over. Isabella's stern mask cracked. A look of pure, unadulterated shock crossed her features. She leaned forward, ignoring her son and his fiancée completely. "You are Tuscan?" she demanded. "Yes, ma'am. From Siena near San Gimignano." A rapid, passionate flood of Italian burst from Isabella. She asked about Emily's family, the last time she'd seen the Pazza del Lampo, if the bread still tasted of salt. Emily answered every question with a warmth and familiarity that melted the ice around the older woman. They spoke of small, specific things, the smell of wild thyme after a rainstorm, the precise way to roast chestnuts, the feast day of St. Catherine. In 2 minutes, Isabella Rossi was laughing. It was a sound Matteo hadn't heard in years. It was full, rich, and real. "This is ridiculous." Victoria snapped her voice low and sharp. Matteo, tell her to take our order in English." But Isabella held up her hand, silencing Victoria without a look. She was still focused on Emily. She reached across the table and grasped Emily's hand, the hand of a waitress, chapped and hard-working. "My dear," Isabella said, her voice thick with sudden emotion, "you are not a waitress. You are a piece of home. You just stole my heart." Matteo heard every word. He looked at Emily, really looked at her for the first time. She wasn't invisible. She was poised, dignified, and had just disarmed the most heavily fortified woman he had ever known. A strange, unfamiliar feeling pricked at his conscience. Emily blushed gently, retrieving her hand. "I will bring the ribollita for you, Signora, and for the rest of the table." The spell was broken. Victoria, seething with a humiliation she couldn't voice, ordered a simple grilled fish. Matteo, his mind reeling, just nodded. The same for me. As Emily walked away, Matteo watched her go, the implications of what just happened settling over him like a shroud. His mother had just declared war. Matteo couldn't focus on the merger. For the next 2 days, the scene at the restaurant played on a loop in his mind. It wasn't just the Italian. It was the way Emily had held herself, the quiet dignity that had refused to be cowed by Victoria's disdain or his mother's intensity. He did something he never did. He acted on impulse. He returned to Lago Tadoro on a Tuesday afternoon, a time he knew would be slow. He found Emily polishing silverware in the back. "Miss Bianche," he said. She jumped, her eyes wide with alarm. "Mr. Rossi, is everything all right? Did your mother—" "My mother is fine. She hasn't stopped talking about you or your grandmother's soup." Emily offered a small, polite smile. "I'm glad she enjoyed it. I didn't come here for soup." Matteo said, feeling uncharacteristically clumsy. "I came to apologize." Emily blinked. "Apologize for what? For my fiancé? For the tension at the table. You were put in an uncomfortable position." Emily paused her polishing. "I'm a waitress, Mr. Rossi. Uncomfortable positions are part of the job description." "But thank you. That's kind." "You're from Siena," he stated, not asked. "Yes." "What are you doing here?" The question was blunt, but he couldn't help it. She didn't belong here, polishing spoons. Emily's guard went up. The warmth from the other night vanished, replaced by a professional chill. "I'm working, Mr. Rossi, just like you. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant." Her voice was quiet, but it had an edge of steel. "You mean, what is someone who can speak proper Italian doing with a tray and an apron? I'm here to pay my bills. Is there anything else I can help you with?" Matteo was taken aback. He was used to people fawning, agreeing, scrambling. He was not used to being dismissed. It was fascinating. "I know, that's all. He placed a $100 bill on the bar for your time." He turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "Mr. Rossi." He turned back. She was holding the bill out to him. "I'm not for sale," she said, softly. "And my time isn't either. But thank you for the apology." It was accepted. Matteo stared at the money, then at her. He nodded curtly, took the bill and left the restaurant, feeling as if he'd just lost a negotiation he didn't even know he was in. Meanwhile, Isabella Rossi was conducting her own mission. Without telling Matteo, she had her driver take her to Lago Tro the same afternoon. She didn't go inside. She waited. She waited until Emily's shift ended at 5:00 p.m. Emily emerged, rubbing her shoulder, and Isabella had the driver pull the Rolls-Royce alongside her. "Emily Bianche." Emily spun around, her jaw dropping, as Isabella Rossi emerged from the car like an empress. "Senor Rossi, is something wrong?" "Yes," Isabella said, gruffly. "I am dying of thirst, and this city only sells flavored sugar water. You will join me for a proper coffee now. Get in." It wasn't a request. 20 minutes later, they were in a small, quiet cafe, a real espresso, in front of Isabella and a cappuccino in front of a bewildered Emily. So Isabella began. "All business? You are from Siena. My family is from Florence. We are old enemies." Emily smiled. "Only during the Palio Signora." "True." Isabella took a sip. "My son is a fool. He is marrying a woman made of plastic. A doll. Una bambola." Emily's eyes widened. "Signora." "I can't." "You will listen," Isabella commanded. "I didn't build an empire with my late husband by being polite. I did it by reading people. And I read you Emily Bianca. You are hiding." Emily's posture stiffened. "I don't know what you mean. You speak with the education of a professor, but you work for tips. Your hands, they are strong, but the calluses are wrong, not from plates. They are old." Isabella reached out and brushed her thumb over the hardened skin on Emily's left fingertips. "These are from chord strings. A violin." Clear's throat. Emily snatched her hand back, her heart hammering. "Please, Signora. My nonna played the violin." Isabella said, her voice suddenly soft. She played when the bombs fell in 43. She said it was the only voice God had left. She looked Emily in the eye. "Who destroyed your voice?" "Cara." The kindness, so unexpected, shattered Emily's defenses. The story tumbled out. Juilliard, the scholarship, the vineyard, the blight, the debts, the predatory lender, a faceless corporation called Terror Acquisitions. Her mother's illness, the violin sold to a pawn shop on 48th Street. By the time she finished, tears were tracing silent paths down her cheeks. Isabella sat unmoved as a mountain, until Emily was done. Then she handed Emily a silk handkerchief. "You cry good. It cleans the wound." "Now stop." Emily wiped her eyes, embarrassed. So Isabella said, her voice hard as iron again. "You lost your family's land and your future to a blight. And you gave up." "I didn't give up." Emily flared. "I am surviving. I am sending money home." "Surviving is not living," Isabella retorted. "You are a Chian woman. We are descended from bankers, artists, and saints. We do not survive. We conquer. You let them take your music. This is the real crime." Isabella stood up, placing a few bills on the table. "My son Matteo, he is a good man, but he is lost. He is surrounded by sharks, and he is trying to become one. That Victoria, she is the worst of them." She turned to Emily. "I am glad I met you, Emily Bianca. You remind me that real things still exist." She started to walk away. "Signora," Emily called out, "why are you telling me this?" Isabella looked back, a dangerous glint in her eye. "Because, Caramir, I never go into a fight without allies. And you have the heart of a contrada. You just forgot how to fight. Isabel's left." Emily sat her coffee cold, her mind reeling. "We do not survive. We conquer." That night, Matteo found his mother in his penthouse library, a violin concerto, playing softly on the stereo. It was Mendelssohn. "Mama, where were you today?" Isabella looked up from her book. "I was getting an education. What does that mean?" "It means I met the girl from the restaurant, Emily. She is not a waitress. She is a violinist, a Juilliard scholar." Matteo froze. A violinist, the calluses on her fingers. Her family, Isabella continued, her voice. Cold was ruined. Their land was stolen by an American corporation. She sold her instrument to pay for her mother's medicine. And you offered her a $100 tip for her time. Shame, hot and sharp, flooded Matteo. He had seen her as a curiosity, a puzzle, not a person. And your Principa Isabella spat your Victoria. She treated this girl like she was dirt on her shoe. You tell me, Matteo, which of these two women has more on her? The one who sold her soul for $1 billion merger, or the one who sold her music to save her family, Matteo had no answer. The music, that beautiful soaring Mendelssohn concerto, filled the silence, sounding less like a song and more like an accusation. The conversation with his mother lit a fire under Matteo. He wasn't just intrigued anymore. He was ashamed. He had built an empire on logic, but he had completely failed to see the truth of a person standing right in front of him. He made one call to Maestro Julian Vance, the famously tempestuous conductor of the New York Philharmonic, and an old acquaintance. He pulled a string, a thick, expensive string, and called in a favor he had been saving for years. He went to Lagotro the next day, but this time he waited outside until Emily's shift was over. Emily. She saw him and her shoulders slumped. Mr. Rossi, if this is about your mother, it's not. It's about this. He handed her an envelope. She opened it. Inside was a single card. It read, Audition Julian Vance Lincoln Center. Thursday, 10:00 a.m. You, clears throat, will play Mendelssohn. Emily looked up, her face pale. What is this? It's an audition, Matteo said simply. Maestro Vance owes me a favor. He will give you 10 minutes. An audition, Mr. Rossi? I don't have a violin. There is a 1741 Guarneri del Gesù in my family's vault. It was my grandmother's, Matteo said. It is being delivered to your apartment as we speak. Consider it a loan. Emily was speechless. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were not of sadness. Why would you do this? My mother said you forgot how to fight, Matteo, said his voice, quiet. I don't believe her. I think you just needed a weapon. He paused. I was wrong about you, Emily. Please accept this. Not as a gift, as an apology. Emily clutched the card. Juilliard Vance Auaneri. It was a dream she had forced herself to forget. Yes, thank you. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, Matteo said. Just play. News of Matteo's charity traveled fast. Victoria Davenport had eyes and ears everywhere. A source on Matteo's security team told her about the violin. A society contact at the Philharmonic told her about the last-minute addition to Vance's schedule. Victoria was not just angry. She was terrified. Her relationship with Matteo was a fortress built on mutual benefit and icy control. She knew better than anyone that it was brittle. It could not withstand the heat of genuine passion either for music or for a woman. This waitress was a threat to everything, to the merger, to her status, to her future. Victoria was a woman who didn't get mad. She got even. And she was far more ruthless than Matteo had ever imagined. Wednesday night, the night before the audition, Emily was exhausted, but electric. She had practiced for 24 hours straight, her fingers raw, her soul soaring. The Guarneri felt like a living thing in her hands. She was ready. She worked her shift at the restaurant on pure adrenaline. Mr. Henderson, the manager, was already annoyed with her, sensing she was distracted. At 9:00 p.m., Victoria Davenport walked into the restaurant alone. She requested Emily's section. Emily, her stomach tightening, approached the table. Good evening, Miss Davenport. A bottle of your best champagne, Victoria said, not looking up from her phone. And bring an extra glass. Emily retrieved the champagne. As she was pouring, Victoria said, So you're the little musician Matteo's charity case. Emily stopped pouring. I'm your waitress, Miss Davenport. Oh, please, spare me the act. Victoria finally looked up, her blue eyes like chips of ice. You think you're special because you can speak his mother's peasant language. Because he bought you a fiddle. It's a violin, Emily said, her hand shaking slightly. It's a toy, Victoria hissed, leaning forward. And he's a man who gets bored with his toys. Let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to go to your little audition. You'll fail, clears throat, because people like you always fail. You don't have the stomach for what it takes to win. And when you do, Matteo will be gone, and you'll be right back here, serving me." "Is that all, Miss Davenport?" Emily's voice was shaking with repressed fury. "No, that's not all." Victoria smiled a thin, cruel smile. "I just wanted to see your face when your little dream collapses. You're out of your league. You're a little mouse trying to play in a palace, and you're about to be stepped on." Emily placed the bottle on the table with a firm thud. "If you'll excuse me, I have other tables." She turned and walked away, Victoria's cold laugh following her. An hour later, Emily was in the employee locker room, changing out of her uniform, her mind trying to block out Victoria's words. She just needed to get home to her violin. Suddenly the door burst open. Mr. Henderson stood there, flanked by 2 NYPD officers. "That's her," Henderson said, pointing. "Emily Bianchi," one of the officers asked. "Yes, what's wrong?" Emily's heart stopped. "Mum, we've had a complaint of theft. Ms. Victoria Davenport reported her wallet stolen. It's a black alligator skin wallet. We have security footage of Miss Davenport near this area, and then of you entering the locker room shortly after." I didn't steal anything. Mr. Henderson has given us permission to search your locker," the officer said, his voice flat. "Go ahead," Emily cried. "I have nothing to hide." The second officer opened her locker. He felt around, pushing aside her street clothes, her worn-out sneakers. Then he pulled something out. "A black alligator skin wallet." "No," Emily whispered. "No, that's not possible. I've never seen that before. It's hers," Henderson sneered. "I knew you were no good, always so high and mighty." "Mum, you're under arrest for grand larceny," the first officer said, pulling out handcuffs. "No, please, I have an audition." Emily screamed, panic rising in her throat. "Tomorrow morning at Lincoln Center. You don't understand. She did this. Victoria, she was here. She set me up. Tell it to the judge, kid," the officer said, snapping the cold steel around her wrists. Emily was dragged through the restaurant, the same restaurant where she had been praised by Isabella Rossi in handcuffs. The other waiters stared. The patrons whispered. It was the ultimate humiliation. As they pushed her into the back of the squad car, she saw a flash of platinum blonde hair in a black town car across the street. Victoria Davenport was watching her phone to her ear, a triumphant smile on her face. Emily's audition was at 10:00 a.m. She was being booked into Central Holding. Her dream wasn't just collapsing. It had been systematically, brutally executed. Matteo was in a late-night meeting discussing fiber optic bandwidth when his personal phone buzzed. It was an alert from his head of security. Subject Ebion. Status arrested. Location NYPD 19th Precinct. He left the meeting without a word, his blood running cold. He arrived at the precinct, looking like a thundercloud, his billion-dollar suit utterly out of place in the grimy waiting room. His high-priced lawyer, Samuel Harding, was already there, having been roused by Matteo's frantic call. "What the hell happened?" Matteo demanded. Larceny, Harding said, flipping through a file. "Theft of a wallet. Value $10,000, plus credit cards. The complainant is Victoria Davenport." Matteo's world tilted. "Victoria, get her out," he ordered. Now it took 2 hours, a significant portion of Matteo's get out of jail-free capital, and a very unhappy judge woken in the middle of the night. But at 3:17 a.m., a shell-shocked Emily Bianchi was released into his custody. She was pale, her eyes red and vacant. She hadn't said a word. "Emily," he said softly, putting a hand on her arm. She flinched away from him, as if he were on fire. Don't touch me, Emily. I'm getting you home. We'll fix this. Fix this." Her voice was a low, dangerous whisper. She finally looked at him, and her eyes were filled with a burning hatred that scorched him. "You fix this like you fixed my audition." Like you fixed my life by sending that Strager to my table. I didn't send her, Emily. You brought her into my life. She yelled, attracting the attention of the night shift cops. You and your mother with your compliments and your apologies. You made me a target. You made me believe. You dangled this dream in front of my face, knowing she would tear me apart. Is this a game for you people? Do you enjoy watching the little people dance before you crush them? No. I swear I didn't know. You knew. She sobbed, the fight finally breaking. You knew what she was and you did nothing. You set me up, or you let her do it. I don't know which is worse. Emily, I will destroy her for this. Matteo growled, his own anger rising. I don't want you to destroy her, Emily cried. I want you to leave me alone. You've done enough. Go. Go marry your monster. Go merge your companies. Just stay out of my world. She turned and ran, not to the waiting town car, but down the street, disappearing into the pre-dawn darkness of the city. Her audition at Lincoln Center was in 6 hours. She was covered in jail grime. Her spirit was broken, and her violin was locked in her apartment. Matteo stood on the steps of the precinct defeated. He had offered power, and she had met it with pride. He had offered money, and she had rejected it. Now he had offered help, and she had rightly accused him of being the source of the poison. He got back in his car and made 2 calls. The first was to Samuel Harding. I want the security footage from Lagosha Doro. All of it from the dining room, the kitchen, the locker room. I don't care what it costs. I want it on my desk in 1 hour. The second call was to his penthouse. His mother picked up on the first ring. Isabella Rossi. Mama. Matteo said, his voice raw. Victoria had Emily arrested. The silence on the line was absolute, a void of cold fury. Matteo, Isabella said, her voice dropping to a lethal calm. Find the truth, or you are no longer my son. The line clicked dead. The war had begun. Matteo fueled by rage, and Espresso reviewed the footage with his lawyer and his head of security. There, Matteo said, pointing. 7:43 p.m. Victoria, on her way to the restroom, passed the employee locker area. The door was propped open for cleaning. She paused, looked both ways and slipped inside. She was in there for 30 seconds. She emerged, her purse clutched in her hand. That's not enough, Harding said. It's suspicious, but it's not proof. Keep watching, Matteo ordered. They watched Victoria's dinner with Emily. They watched Emily's humiliation as she was arrested. Wait, Matteo said. Go back the wallet. Zoom in on the wallet the cop pulled from the locker. They zoomed in. Clear's throat was black. It was alligator. Now go back to when Victoria entered the restaurant. They rewound. Victoria walked in, holding her phone. Tucked under her arm was a black alligator skin, clutch the same one she had when she left. She didn't lose her wallet, Matteo whispered. She had 2. A plant, Harding breathed. She brought a decoy wallet, an identical one. She planted it, kept her own, and called the police. The cold, premeditated psychopathic viciousness of it hit Matteo like a physical blow. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was an execution. He stormed into his library where Victoria was sipping a morning smoothie, preparing for a day of wedding-related press. You, he said, his voice shaking. Victoria looked up, annoyed. Matteo, darling, you look dreadful. What is it? How was dinner last night? Her eyes flashed just for a second. Fine. A bit dramatic. The staff arrested one of the waitresses. Stole my wallet. Can you believe it? The riff-raff. They hire these. Matteo slammed a tablet down on the antique desk. The video file open. 7:43 p.m. Victoria entering the locker room. You planted it. Victoria's smile didn't waver, but her eyes went dead. I don't know what you're talking about. You planted the wallet, Victoria. You framed her. You brought a decoy wallet to frame an innocent woman. And what if I did? She spat, dropping the mask. That little was threatening us. She was threatening our merger. She was distracting you with her sob stories and her Italian. I did what had to be done. I protected our future. You should be thanking me. Matteo looked at her, truly seeing the void behind her perfect features. Our future? I'm canceling the merger, Victoria laughed. A real ugly laugh. Don't be a fool, Matteo. You can't. Your board won't let you. My father will destroy you. This isn't about us. This is about business. And you will not let a violinist get in the way of a $50 billion deal. You're not that stupid. Get out, he whispered. What, get out of my home now, Matteo? You're being hysterical. Get out, he roared, sweeping a Ming vase off a pedestal. It shattered against the wall. Victoria jumped, her face white with shock and rage. She grabbed her purse. You will regret this, Matteo. You have no idea what you've just done. She stormed out. Matteo stood in the wreckage of his library, the Menson from the other night echoing in his head. He had won the battle, but Emily had lost the war. She had missed the audition, Claire's throat. He had cleared her name, but he had failed to save her dream. He picked up his phone and called the only other person in the city he could trust. Mama, it's done. But I need your help. I need to find her. While Matteo was confronting Victoria, Emily was walking. She had walked for hours aimlessly through Central Park, watching the sun come up. The 10:00 a.m. audition time came and went, a hollow ache in her chest. Victoria had won. She eventually made her way back to her tiny apartment, expecting an eviction notice. The manager, Henderson, had surely called her landlord. But when she got there, a different man was waiting, leaning against her door. He was older, in a rumpled trench coat, and looked entirely out of place. Miss Emily Bianchi, he asked, his voice growly. Who are you, a cop? She asked, her voice flat and tired. Private name's Arthur Vance, no relation to the conductor, unfortunately. He held up a small badge. I work for the Rossi family. Emily's heart sank. I told him to leave me alone. He did. He sent his mother and his mother. Vance chuckled. Sent me. May I come in? Emily was too exhausted to argue. She unlocked her door. The first thing she saw was the violin, the guana. It was still there, gleaming in its case. She touched the smooth wood, a fresh wave of grief hitting her. Mrs. Rossi wanted me to make sure you and the instrument were secure, Vance said, looking around the small, clean apartment. Sheet music was neatly stacked on a small desk. She also wanted me to look into your problem, the theft. It doesn't matter. I was cleared. Oh, you were cleared an hour after you left the precinct, Vance said, pulling out a small notebook. Case dismissed. Charges dropped. Mr. Henderson at the restaurant has been fired. Seems Rossi Global is a major investor in the parent company of Lagoscia d'Oro. Funny how that works. So it's over, Emily said, sinking onto a small sofa. He cleaned up his mess. That Vance said is where you're wrong. That's not the problem Mrs. Rosie sent me to solve. I'm not a repo man. I'm an investigator. She wanted me to look into this. He tapped the sheet music. She told me your story about Juilliard, about your family's vineyard in Siena, about the blight. Emily looked up, a new, sharp fear cutting through her exhaustion. What about it? I've been on the phone all night with my contacts in Italy. Vance said, I'm very good at what I do, Miss Bianchi. I looked into the company that bought your family's debt. Terror Acquisitions. They were a lender. We couldn't pay. Terror Acquisitions isn't a lender, Miss Bianchi. It's a shell corporation, a ghost. It exists only to buy land. Specifically land that is problematic to acquire through normal channels. I don't understand. Vance leaned forward, his eyes sharp. The blight that ruined your family's crops. It wasn't natural. My contacts found traces of a highly advanced experimental herbicide in the soil samples from the Agricultural Ministry. An herbicide that is not approved for use in the EU. It was targeted. It was sabotage. Emily stopped breathing. Sabotage who, why? We had nothing. You had land, Vance said. And that land, it seems, is uniquely rich in a specific mineral coltan. It's not common in Tuscany. In fact, it's almost unheard of, but it's essential for high-end microprocessors and electric vehicle batteries. The words hung in the air. Electric vehicle batteries. I did some digging on terror acquisitions, Vance continued, his voice grim. It took some work, but I finally peeled back the layers. It's owned by another holding company, which is owned by another. Owned by who Emily whispered, though she suddenly, sickeningly knew the answer. A parent company you might recognize, Vance said, flipping a page in his notebook. Davenport Industries. Emily felt the blood drain from her face. It wasn't just jealousy. It wasn't just Matteo. Victoria. Victoria Davenport, Vance confirmed. Or more likely, her father, Silas. They've been trying to corner the EV battery market. They found the mineral deposit on your land. They knew your family would never sell. So they ruined you. They manufactured a blight, bankrupted your family with a ghost lender, and snatched your home, your future, for pennies on the dollar. Emily stood up, her legs shaking. This was a monster beyond her comprehension. Victoria hadn't just tried to get her fired. She hadn't just tried to get her arrested. Victoria Davenport had systematically, and with cold-blooded precision, destroyed her entire life, long before she ever set foot in that restaurant. The gala, Emily said the words, tasting like ash. The merger gala. It's Friday. Vance nodded. That's right. The grand celebration of the Rossi-Davenport Union. Emily looked at the rumpled investigator, and the exhaustion was gone. The grief was gone. In their place was a cold, pure, sane fury. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice clear and hard as diamond. "Isabella Rossi told me I forgot how to fight. She was wrong." She walked over to the violin case and opened it. She didn't forget, Vance said, a slow smile spreading across his face. She just needed a reason. "What are you going to do?" Emily picked up the magnificent violin, its strings humming with potential. "I'm going to crash a party," she said. The Temple of Dendor at the Metropolitan Museum of Art was not merely a room. It was a statement. An ancient sandstone temple, gifted by Egypt and reconstructed brick by brick, stood as a monument to permanence, surrounded by a reflecting pool. Tonight it was the backdrop for the forging of a new dynasty. 2,000 of the world's most powerful people, draped in couture and dripping with heirloom jewels, buzzed with the energy of a $50 billion deal. A string quartet played softly in the background, but the dominant sound was the crisp clinking of champagne flutes and the murmur of congratulations. At the center of it all, on a slightly raised dais, stood the architects of the future. Silas Davenport, his face ruddy with triumph, clapped Matteo on the back. "A great night, son. A great night for the future." Victoria beside him was a vision in sculptural liquid silver. She was radiant, her smile as bright and hard as the diamonds at her throat. She had won. Matteo's episode 2 days ago had clearly been just that, a momentary fit of conscience quickly subdued by the tidal wave of capital. He was back by her side, his face a mask of cold politeness. The merger was on, and the little waitress was a forgotten footnote. "Matteo, darling," she cooed, linking her arm through his. "You came to your senses. I knew you would. You just needed a moment to see the bigger picture." Matteo looked at her, his expression unreadable. He felt the fine wool of his Beyond suit like a suit of armor. "You're right, Victoria. I am finally seeing the bigger picture." Beside him, Isabella Rossi stood silent, a marble matriarch in severe black silk. Her only concession to the event was a massive blood-red ruby necklace that looked less like jewelry and more like a warning. She watched the room, her eyes missing nothing, her expression one of profound, patient calm. The string quartet reached the end of a Vivaldi piece. In the momentary silence, the massive bronze doors at the far end of the hall behemed open, clear as throat, the sound echoing off the stone and glass. The music stopped. The chatter died. 2,000 heads turned. A single figure stood silhouetted in the entryway. As she moved into the light, a collective stunned gasp rippled through the room. It was Emily Bianca. She was not in a waitress uniform. She was wearing a floor-length gown of deep emerald velvet, a dress from Isabella's private collection that clung to her with the simple, devastating elegance of a bygone era. Her auburn hair was piled high, revealing the long, graceful line of her neck. She was pale, but her eyes were burning. She looked, as one guest whispered, like a Sargent painting that had decided to walk out of its frame. But it wasn't the dress that held the room captive. It was what she was carrying. In her right hand, she held a violin, the deep amber red of the Guarneri. In her left, a bow. She did not hesitate. She did not look at the staring faces. She walked directly toward the dais, her heels clicking with a steady metronomic rhythm on the marble floor. It was not a walk, it was a procession. Victoria's face, a moment ago radiant, collapsed into a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. What are you doing here?" she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. "Security, security. Get her out of here now." Two large men in tuxedos and earpieces moved forward, converging on Emily. "Stop!" The word was not a shout, but it sliced through the room with the force of a command. Matteo stepped down from the dais, his hand raised. The security guards froze. "Silas!" Victoria pleaded, her voice rising in panic. "Matteo, what is this? Some kind of joke? Is this your mother's doing, Matteo, my boy?" Silas Davenport boomed, still oblivious. "Is this a surprise performance? A little entertainment before the main event?" Matteo ignored him. He walked until he was standing in front of Emily. The room was so quiet that 2,000 guests could hear the faint hum of the air circulation. He looked at Emily, his eyes asking a final question. She gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. He gently took her hand and turned to face the shocked and silent crowd. He led her to the small stage, where a single microphone stood ready for the merger announcement. "Victoria." Matteo said, his voice amplified, clear and cold as the reflecting pool beside them. "You said I was a fool. You said I wouldn't let a little waitress get in the way of a $50 billion deal." He turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. You are here tonight to celebrate the union of Rossi Global and Davenport Industries. You are here to witness the bedrock of any great enterprise: trust, honor, integrity." The crowd murmured, confused. Silas Davenport smiled, thinking this was a rhetorical flourish. Tonight, Matteo continued, "I have learned that I was prepared to build a future on a foundation of lies. I was prepared to merge my family's legacy with a woman and a company that possesses neither." The gasp this time was a roar. "That is a lie." Victoria shrieked, finally understanding. "He's insane. He's humiliating me." "Matteo, stop this." "Am I?" Matteo said, 2 nights ago, my fiancée, Victoria Davenport, a woman of immense privilege, went to the restaurant where this woman, Emily Bianca, was working." He gestured to Emily. She framed her for the theft of her wallet. She planted a decoy wallet in Miss Bianca's locker and had her arrested, all to stop her from attending an audition that might have changed her life, all because she was inconvenient. "It's not true," Victoria cried, her eyes darting to her father. "He's making it up." "Am I?" Matteo said again. He nodded to the back of the room. The massive screens that were supposed to show a video celebrating the merger flickered to life. The room watched in high definition the security footage from Lagotro. They saw 7:43 p.m. They saw Victoria's silver-gowned figure slip into the locker room. They saw her emerge 30 seconds later. They saw the police arriving. They saw Emily, in her waitress uniform, being led out in handcuffs. It's a deep fake," Victoria sobbed, grabbing her father's arm. "It's not real. Silas, do something." But that Matteo's voice boomed over her denial. Cutting through the chaos is not the real crime. That was just petty, vicious jealousy. The real story is why Miss Davenport felt so threatened in the first place. He looked at Emily, giving her the floor. Emily Bianca stepped forward to the microphone. Her Clear's throat hand was shaking, but her voice was clear. "My name is Emily Bianca," she said. The entire vast hall leaned in to listen. I was a violinist. I was offered a full scholarship to Gilead, but I never went." She paused, taking a breath. "My family has owned a small vineyard in Siena for 200 years. It was my nonno's, my grandfather's life. 6 years ago, a mysterious blight wiped out our entire crop, all of it. We lost everything." She looked not at Matteo, but directly at Silas Davenport, who was watching her with a new, dawning horror. A company called Terror Acquisitions appeared. Emily continued, her voice gaining strength. "They offered to buy our debt. They offered us pennies. We had no choice. They took our land. My family was ruined. My mother became ill. I sold my violin, the one my nonno gave me to pay for her medicine. I came here. I became a waitress. I became invisible." Clear's throat. "This is slander." Silas bellowed, his face turning a deep, apoplectic purple. "What does this have to do with anything security? Remove this woman. Terror Acquisitions," Matteo's voice cut in, hard as steel, "is a shell corporation. It took my legal team 2 days to unravel it. 2 days to find that it is wholly owned by a parent company, Davenport Industries." The room imploded. The sound was deafening. The blight wasn't a blight. Matteo shouted over the noise. It was sabotage, a targeted experimental herbicide. "I have the soil analysis. I have the bank transfers. And I have the motive. Your land, Ms. Bianchi's land, is one of the only places in Tuscany with a massive unmined deposit of coltan, essential for EV batteries for a future you wanted to own. Lies all of it." Silas roared, lunging toward the stage. "Is it?" Matteo called out. "Arthur." A man in a rumpled trench coat, looking utterly out of place, emerged from the crowd. "Arthur Vance." Isabella's investigator walked calmly past the shocked guests. He wasn't holding a drink. He was holding a thick folio. He walked straight to a woman in the front row, the bureau chief for the Wall Street Journal, and handed it to her. "The full report," Mom Vance said loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Soil samples, Swiss bank records, chemical patents, it's all in there." The reporter grabbed the folio. Flashbulbs, which had been sporadic, now erupted, like automatic weapon fire. A blinding, non-stop strobe. Silas Davenport stopped frozen as he realized it was over. He looked at his daughter, his face a mask of pure, murderous rage. Victoria wasn't sobbing. She was a statue of shattered glass, her mouth open, a silent scream frozen on her lips. She had been exposed not just as a cruel rival, but as the co-architect of a life-destroying international crime. The room was in total chaos. Reporters were shouting. Guests were scrambling, moving away from the Davenports as if they were contagious. And in the center of the storm, Emily Bianca lifted the guarneri to her chin. She drew the bow, and a single, perfect golden note soared above the human wreckage. It was not a whisper. It was a command. The shouting stopped. The reporters froze, their cameras still raised. The 2,000 guests turned stunned into absolute silence. Emily closed her eyes and played. She played the second movement of the Mendelssohn concerto. It was the sound of everything she had lost. The music spoke of her non-nose hands, of the smell of time after a reign of her mother's illness, of 6 years of exhaustion and humiliation. The notes poured from the violin, a river of heartbreaking sorrow that filled the ancient temple. But then the music shifted. The sadness deepened. But beneath it a current of profound strength emerged. It was no longer a lament. It was a reckoning. It was the sound of a soul reforged in fire, a sound of truth that was beautiful and terrible all at once. She played for her family. She played for her lost years. And she played for herself. When the final soaring note hung in the air, the silence that followed was more profound than the music itself. Emily Bianca lowered the violin, her chest heaving. She opened her eyes, the chaos of the room, the flashes of the cameras, the ruin of the Davenports. It all seemed a mile away. The only thing she saw was Matteo standing next to her. He had tears streaming unashed down his face. "My mother," he whispered, his voice thick for her ears only. "She said you stole her heart." He reached out his hand, shaking, and brushed a stray tear from Emily's cheek with his thumb. "But I think," he said, his voice breaking, "you have stolen mine." Emily finally smiled. A real brilliant smile that outshone every diamond in the room. Across the hall near the entrance, Isabella Rossi watched her son and the violinist their own small island in a sea of scandal. She looked at the wreckage of the Davenport family, who were now being swarmed by security and lawyers. She raised her glass of champagne, not to the crowd but to Emily. "Salute," she whispered, and took a long, satisfied drink. In the end, it wasn't the billionaire's money that saved the day. It was the truth. Emily Bianca, who had been silenced for so long, finally had her voice returned, not just by Matteo's power, but by her own courage. The Davenport empire crumbled, facing international lawsuits, and a scandal they could never recover from. And Emily, she didn't just get her family's land back, she got her life back. She never went back to Juilliard. Instead, 6 months later, she made her debut at Carnegie Hall with the Geri violin, a gift from Isabella Rossi. Matteo was in the front row, not as a billionaire, but as the man who had learned that the greatest acquisitions aren't on a balance sheet. They're in the heart. What did you think of Emily's incredible journey? Do you believe the truth will always find a way out? This story shows that sometimes the person who seems the most invisible has the most powerful story to tell. If you were moved by Emily and Matteo's story, please smash that like button. It really helps our channel grow. And don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a reminder that justice can and will be served. Most importantly, if you want more stories of karma, hidden truths, and dramatic twists, subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell. We have so many more stories to share with you. Thank you for listening.